All right. Well, yes, welcome to this breakout session. This session is to learn a little bit more about the electrical trade. And so I am Ashley June Moore, Director of the Washington University College Advising Corps, and I will help just moderate our session. We have the privilege of being able to spend our entire time with Mr. Shawn Levin, who I will give him an opportunity to introduce himself as well. But if you have questions, you can either put them in the chat, or it seems like we might be a smaller group, so we may be able to answer them live as Shawn feels comfortable. So with that, we'll just go ahead and get started. Thanks.
Thank you, Ashley. My name is Shawn Levin. I'm the director at the St. Louis Electrical Industry Training Center. And if my math is correctly, this is my 4th week as director. So I'm still learning a lot as I go forward in this process. So we are a registered apprenticeship with the DOL, as was mentioned previously. Another advantage to a registered apprenticeship that wasn't mentioned was our registered apprentices are able to work on what is referred to as a prevailing wage job. So for example, the NGA project downtown, if you are not a registered apprentice, but are not a journey level worker and some other middle classification, but not registered, you would not be allowed to work on that project, regardless of the trade you're with, simply because of the prevailing wage requirements. So that's just a little aside as far as that goes. In order to apply for our program, we're doing appointments so we could minimize the number of people in our lobby for obvious reasons. So you can apply when you're 17, but you have to be 18 by the time of selection or placement. So that gives some people a head start if they know that's what they want to do. You have to be a high school graduate or have a GED. And we have to have a birth certificate. We ask for certified transcripts so we can confirm, obviously, your residency and also your performance in school. We do have a requirement of at least 1 full year with a passing grade of algebra and geometry. And if someone doesn't have that, it's not an automatic disqualifier. It just means they'll have to go through one more step and take an online math class and successfully complete that class in order to even apply for our program. Our program, once you do get into the day school or even night school portion, is very math intensive. And if someone doesn't have a basic or a decent foundation in those areas, they're going to really struggle. It can be very intensive for some students. Again, and also you have to live within our jurisdiction. So an Illinois resident, we are not supposed to take applications from Illinois residents because that is outside of our jurisdiction. We go as far north almost to Hannibal, it's down as far down south as the Boot Heel, east almost to Columbia and Jefferson City. So we have quite a wide range of jurisdiction for potential applicants. We have a probationary period for people that meet the minimum requirements. Sorry, let me back up once. After the application process, we have an aptitude test that people have to take before they can get an interview. It consists of reading comprehension and algebra, roughly 45 minutes for one of them and roughly 50 minutes for the other. And that just helps us have a minimum standard that we have to stick by. And then you get an interview. Upon an interview, you're ranked on how you did with both your testing and on your interview process. And then you would eventually be, if you ranked high enough, you would be placed with a contractor. The probationary period can last up to 2,000 hours. Of course, you're getting paid the entire time. It's not a pre-apprenticeship, as was mentioned previously. Ours is actually a probationary period of time. It allows the applicant or the probationary apprentice to really decide if this really is what they want to do prior to entering school and investing too much time into the program. And it allows us to, of course, evaluate people on the job to see if they are even have the basic tools needed to progress in our system. So once you work as a probationary apprentice for 750 hours, you then qualify for another interview to get into our day school program. Our day school program consists of working 4 days a week with a contractor and then attending class 1 day a week. And not only obviously are you paid while you work for the contractor, we pay our apprentices to attend school 1 day a week, which I don't know if there are any other apprenticeships or very few in existence that pay their apprentices to go to school. In addition to that, once you do complete the apprenticeship, you can earn up to 60 credit hours for college. And we even have a degree program we set up through St. Louis Community College, where we're just taking, I believe, 3, 4, 5 additional classes. You can have an associate's, it's called a Skilled Trades Associates of Applied Science degree for journey worker electrician, which is a mouthful. But it's just one more step people can take in their educational journey if they so choose to do so. Again, we do have a high emphasis on education here. While you do have to perform in the field and learn the craft as you go along, we have very high standards and expectations of our apprentices to perform in a classroom as well. You must maintain a 70% average, a 90% attendance rating, or you potentially face being removed from the program. So we do have high standards. We really want the cream of the crop here. We have commercial and industrial programs. We have residential program, and we have a telecommunications program for those that may be more interested in the building automation area of things, or home automation, home theater, that type of work. So we do cover a wide area. I don't know. I mean, that's a basic rundown. Any questions or any discussion you guys like to have on anything?
We did get one question so far. So do you have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident for this apprenticeship?
I believe that you do, yes. You must be, again, 18 years of age at the time of placement or interview, and you do have to be a U.S. citizen, yes.
Okay.
Which is, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, do you know if that applies to other apprenticeships as well?
I cannot answer for that. I would imagine that there is some regulation with the DOL, so it may vary depending on whether it's a registered apprenticeship or not. My apologies for that. Again, I'm learning a lot, in my 4 weeks in. So those are all things I need to explore as I move forward. But yes, you do need to be a U.S. citizen. That is true. We do. I know there's, in the news sometimes there's questions about felons. We do accept felons. It is not an automatic disqualifier for us. While the question is still on our application, it is something I think that's being looked at to be removed. Just kind of the sign of the times, I think, second chance options and things of that nature. If someone's willing to put into work, both on the job and in the classroom, we're willing to give them a shot. So.
I'm sorry, could you repeat how far south you go with your program?
All the way down into the Boot Heel, right up to the border of Arkansas. So that is our jurisdiction. Yes, ma'am. I some years ago worked on a project down in at the P&G factory in Jackson, Missouri, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. Just near Cape Girardeau, but we go all the way down to Arkansas.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Another question came through. So what if I already know an employer who wants to hire me as an apprentice? Does that shorten any of the process?
No, but it doesn't hurt. As far as shortening the time frame, everybody still has to meet the minimum standards. Everybody still has to go through the application process. And everybody has to take the aptitude test. There is no, except in certain circumstances through organizing efforts or in some situations, for example, I mentioned NGA earlier, and of course with the soccer stadium being built downtown, there are some residency and minority requirements that we will have to fill and address, that we may have to go outside the normal process. But even those people that we would have to place, they still have to go through the application process and meet the minimum qualifications before we can place them. But let's just Sachs Electric, for example, a well-known St. Louis large contractor, they can't just hire somebody to be an apprentice electrician for them. All referrals for apprentices come out of my office. I deal with that myself. I place every apprentice with the contractor, and that's just our system. We also have apprentice rotations so that an apprentice will not be stuck working for one contractor their entire career, or their entire apprenticeship, I should say. We have 2 rotations built in. So at certain points, we will rotate them to a different contractor so they can get a different set of experiences, a different skill set, possibly depending on what that contractor specializes in. And it really just helps broaden the education that we provide for our people.
Great. And then are you looking for different skills depending on if a student wants to be a wireman, for example, or go into telecommunications?
Past experience doesn't hurt, and that's something that comes out in the interview process. I mean, we also have people with bachelor's and master's degrees that come to our program that have gone to college because that was what was expected. That's what was expected of me. I went to Southwest Missouri State, and then realize after working in whatever their chosen profession, or maybe they can't get a job in their chosen profession, depending on their degree, realize that they don't necessarily want that type of an occupation. Not too long ago, I interviewed a bank manager, and he was actually manager of 3 different branches. So he was pretty successful in his chosen career path, but he decided that wasn't what he wanted to do. And he came to us, and he's happy working as an electrician right now. But as far as experience, it doesn't hurt, but it is not required. You can have 0 experience fresh out of high school, and you got just as good a shot as someone with experience. But what it will definitely do is give you a possible advantage when you get on the job site. However, I have discovered that most people that come to us really have no idea what this job entails. My dad was an electrician. I had no idea what it took to do this job. It is very technical. There are many different facets to what we do, everything from low voltage to high voltage and everything in between. And that's one draw for me, honestly, was being able to do something different, not getting stuck in doing say light fixtures, for my whole career, or someone that just builds a scaffold their whole career. I get a varied education and a varied work experience in the 25 years I've been doing this.
Thanks. You mentioned earlier some of the grade requirements in specific courses. So can you please just repeat the process if a student doesn't have a passing grade in 1 year of algebra and geometry? And then what is actually considered a passing grade? Is it a C or a D?
Well, a D is a passing grade, but we give a numerical value to it. An F, of course, would be 0. And you have to have a full year. So it's by semester as well. So depending on, for example, I just went over an application where someone only had 1 semester of algebra. I'm assuming they dropped out, they got a D, I don't know. But it is given a numerical value. And if you add up to the appropriate number of credits, then you will qualify for an interview. If you don't, for example, this application I was just reviewing, if you don't have what is the minimum, then you can take an online, what's called a tech math class, and it gets into algebra, it gets into geometry, some trigonometry, and it just gives you a basis to start from. And once they successfully complete that online tech math class, then they're they've met the minimum requirements then to apply for an interview.
Great. And then if a student goes to Rankin first, does that shorten the apprenticeship or does it help in getting accepted to the program?
Again, that's one of the things that might come up in the interview process where the interviewer may say, oh, he's already been to Rankin, he's got some experience under his belt. It does not shorten the process. Everyone, generally speaking, goes through the same process, other than those instances I referenced where we have to meet a certain residency or minority status for a project. It would certainly help the student in the classroom. And depending on, we have had in the past some students that went to Rankin, did work for a contractor outside of our umbrella of contractors, if you will, that were brought in to maybe organizing efforts, or they came to us later. They can ask for credit in hours, and it's up to our training committee if they grant those or not, generally speaking. But in most cases, up to half, no more than 1,000 hours has been the general rule. But in some cases, guys that were organized in after working, 5-10 years out in the field with a different contractor, sometimes they are granted more hours. But someone that's just gone to Rankin generally won't get any hours credited.
Okay, thanks. And can you say more about what a student can expect once they become a journey person or a journeyman? So like, is the work steady year round? Should they expect some months with no work? How is that play out?
It's always hard to predict. In St. Louis, we seem to lag behind the rest of the country in the good times and the bad times. So I don't know why that is. It just seems to be the case. When the rest of the country, construction industry sees a work slowdown, we're usually still going pretty strong. But then 6 months or a year later, we start slowing down and everyone else starts picking up. Why that happens, I don't know. But it does ebb and flow. But you have to plan for that. When I was an apprentice, I was told, make sure you have 6 months in reserves, to cover expenses. And it seems, this day and age, most people don't even know how to save $10, much less, 6 months of salary. But it's something you need to become used to plan for those slow times. However, another advantage of the IBEW, which is who we're affiliated with, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and NECA, which is National Electrical Contractors Association, is once you're a journeyman wireman, we have the ability to travel anywhere in this country, and our membership receipt that we carry with us allows us to go to work in any other jurisdiction in this country. You just have to go to the union, and every union hall is a little different. You go and you sign what's called their out of work list, and you have an opportunity to go to work, albeit away from home. But if need be, you can go to work and still provide for your family in a different state, which is, I've done a couple of times myself. I never went too far, but I did work in Illinois across the river at the refinery. And it allowed me to stay close to home, but still do what I knew how to do and still earn a really good living and keep my health insurance going and provide for my family. Our system, once you have the hours in and you've banked up your hours, for example, health insurance, if I got laid off today, my family has health insurance for a solid year from the day I get laid off. So not many, if any, other industries out there, I think, are able to say that. And while that doesn't put food on the table, it does alleviate that pressure of what are we going to do if one of my children gets hurt? We still have health insurance. I've got a little bit of time. I can figure out what our next move is, whether it means I go out of town or that means I figure some other way to earn money, while staying at home. I've gone through 2 long periods of time of unemployment in my local jurisdiction, which is when I went out of town. But the first one was 9 months long, and it was, you get laid off and you're looking at that kind of a wait to go to work, and it's, it takes its toll. My wife was working on her PhD at the time, and I chose not to go out of town, because if I went out of town, I wouldn't be there to help with the kids, and and she wouldn't be able to continue what she was doing at that moment. So we did what we had to do. But again, they need to be prepared. They need to be prepared for some slow times. I'm not going to lie and tell people that it's always rosy. It's not. It's hard work. It's you're working in the cold, you're working in the heat, but you do get to work with your hands, and you get to see different things and do different things. But they need to be prepared. And unfortunately, increasingly, I'm seeing the younger generation as they come in, they don't seem to know how to handle their finances very well.
Thanks for that.
I know it's a little long-winded, but
no, it's great. Another question came in. So if a student has a bachelor's in electrical in their home country, how does that translate to your program?
It wouldn't give them any credit for classes. It would certainly meet our qualifications to get the interview for the minimum qualifications, but it doesn't give them any credit as far as our classes go. We have electrical engineers that were in our apprentices. In fact, one gentleman went to WashU, got his EE through WashU while he was an apprentice, which I don't know how he had the time to do all that, work full time, come to school here, and also attend classes to get his EE, but he did it. But doing that didn't give him credit towards our training. We have a minimum requirement of 900 hours of classroom instruction, and we can't circumvent that in order to meet our standards. But obviously, someone with for example, a EE is going to have an advantage in the classroom, and we usually try to tap those students to be tutors for those students that do need additional help. Just a little extra time, a little one-on-one time.
Can you say more about the outlook for careers in this field? Maybe like salary range, or like, are there openings?
Currently, the job outlook is looking good. It's been fairly steady, a little bit of a dip, but it's been fairly steady. And honestly, it is looking good. The contractor I was working for prior to coming down here to take this job had in excess of $250 million of work on their book alone, which that doesn't mean it's happening this year, but it's work that they had secured that was, that they were going to be performing. And that's just one contractor. Again, it does ebb and flow. But as far as work outlook, currently it's looking pretty strong. In fact, we're looking to increase our apprenticeship class size. Obviously, COVID had an impact on the work situation for our contractors as well as everybody else, and it reduced the number of apprentices we could have in the building. So we actually don't have a first semester apprenticeship class running right now. We have 2 second semesters because of the interruption of COVID. While we could do some of our instruction distance learning virtually, it really doesn't lend itself to that because of the hands-on nature of what we do. We have a lot of lab time, and we just aren't able to provide the real education they're supposed to be getting in a virtual setting. So we had the apprentices that were in second semester repeat, and apprentices that were in first semester that moved up to second. So we have 2 second semesters right now. As far as salary, again, if you work steady, if you work steady, you're going to make a decent living for your family. You're going to have 4 weeks of paid vacation. You're going to have holiday pay that you get quarterly checks for, and a larger check at the end of the year. So you work steady, the journeyman wireman. In December, you're going to get about a $2,000 check right before Christmas hits. So for those people that can't save money, that's a nice little help right before the holidays. So, but money wise, again, I don't really like to talk specifics on money just because it varies. Obviously, if you have a period of layoff, you're not going to make as much. If you work overtime, you're going to make a lot more. If you don't like to work overtime, you're not going to make as much. So, you know, I know plenty of electricians that make in excess of 6 figures. And then some might only make, you know, I say only, you know, 50, 60, 70, 80,000. But that's, you know, that's a decent living, especially when you were paid to go to school. But that's, you know, a rough range of where you might be. Of course, if you're no good to your contractor, you're not going to stay employed. You're not going to make very much, but that's up to the individual. Of course, you know, you do the best you can in the job, you're going to stay employed.
Thanks. We have about 3 minutes left, so I just want to open the floor up if there are other questions while we have the expert in the room before we get pulled back to the main session in, like I said, about 3 minutes.
I will say that talking about the money, our probationary apprentices, which is what they start at once they've gone through the application and interview process, on their check at our current wage rate, is based on a percentage. It's 40% of the journeyman rate. On their check, they're making just under $17 an hour, which used to sound like more until all the $15 an hour, you know, conversations happening out there. So it doesn't sound like as much. But in addition to that, with their benefit package, when they start, it really bumps them up to just under $25 an hour. So they've got health insurance right out the gate. They've got, you know, holiday pay right out the gate. Some of the other benefits don't kick in until they actually get past the probationary period. Again, that's the period for them to see if they want to stay with us and if we want them to stay with us. So once they get past the probationary period, it really starts stepping up fairly quickly.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Thank you very much for the information.
You're welcome. I guess I didn't talk quite long enough.
It's fine. Well, yeah, if there are no other questions, definitely want to thank you for sharing all the information that you shared with us.
Absolutely.
And we can go back to the main room.